Welcome back everyone to Hanseatic Dreamland, our Planet Coaster 2 project in an abandoned area of the Hamburg Harbor area. Today's episode is for all of those who have a hard time filling in gaps, building queues, making sure certain areas are done, just for those who tend to build something new before they have finished what they started last time. So, and with that, welcome to today's episode. Before we get into it, and I'm going to explain quite a lot today, we are talking about the sponsor of the channel, which is Instant Gaming. If you don't know by now, this is a platform where you can get game keys or in-game currency for always a great value. They have always discounted games, discounted in-game currencies, just like PlayStation money, Xbox money, whatever. You know the drill, and you can obviously get all your favorite games, DLCs for your favorite games. You can check out pre-orders over there, and everything has a very, very good value. They do obviously have a 24/7 customer support if you are in need of something, and yeah, you also help me by purchasing your games via the linky in my description. But now let's talk about today's episode. So before I really go into the details of today's episode, because there's quite a lot to talk about, the lore of our park, the history of this area, the coaster itself, a lot of the things I thought about while doing this, and my, well, tips and tricks how to really get those things done, despite the fact you may want to do something new, I guess. But first things first. So we are in Hanseatic Dreamland. That means we are in a park that is using an abandoned harbor area. So the idea of the park, for those of you who joined the series maybe later on, is that a company, the Nepali Co. company, which is Nepali, has been my biggest project in Planet Coaster 1, Isa Nepali, and the holder of that one, the company behind, they have purchased this section of the harbor, and in a joint venture with a German company, they have decided to turn this abandoned harbor area into a theme park. That means they are obviously also need to overcome quite a lot of struggles that come with being in the harbor area, and one of those struggles will always be weather, and will always be using the given space. Despite the fact it may seem like you have a lot of space, obviously, because of a harbor area being very flat, being very spacious for like logistics, having a lot of space for containers apparently, but they also have a lot of infrastructure that is in place. So there's quite a lot of railroads already in the ground. There is quite a lot of streets and concrete patterns where different cars can move around apparently. Or in the past, and this is where the railroads come from, where the train can go, and there are like a lot of canals, obviously, for the ships to pass through and bring the stuff to where it needs to go. And then we apparently also have a lot of cranes, and last but not least, and this is what we are tackling already on the screen, they have a lot of buildings there already. A lot of storage buildings, old crane buildings, old facilities housing, well, potentially the stuff that just used to work in the harbor area, but also it did house a lot of the facilities required for running a harbor area. Offices, making sure there's also, all the stuff that is going to work with the trading centers, and a whole bunch of storage, silos, and all this type of stuff where you put all the goods in, because again, it's not always about containers. It is also about the goods that are being stored in the harbor. And harbors used to be the biggest marketplaces in ancient times, I was about to say, but in the past. Because in the harbors, some of the goods needed to be stored immediately over there. Like, for example, if you get all the corn and stuff like that, it needs to be stored right where they are to ensure that it's not going to go dispatch, or is actually dispatched to the weather effects and so on. So they had to have a lot of space that is required for that. And what we are going to do, we are utilizing all these spaces and turn them into, for example, the buildings for our coasters. And this coaster specifically over here is one of the new hero attractions of our park. So we have moved our way from the very beginning, where I had a very clear concept for, maybe you guys have seen that even before the game has been launched. I had a very clear concept in mind, where to do, what to do, how the layout works, but then we meandered into a new pattern and a new part of our park, which is a bit more loose from the initial concept I had in mind. But I always wanted to build a coaster like that, a Eurofighter kind of type of coaster. And this one specifically over here was one of the most requested ones by you guys in the comments that you really thought would fit well in this position. And oh boy, did that fit well. Now, it is one of the first coasters in a long while that I've been starting to custom support. In the last episode, we did already do quite a lot of custom supporting alongside the restaurant, and today's episode will be a lot more about custom supporting and doing the queue line. The queue line specifically is very special. It is the first time I've utilized a little trick of making a sunken queue line. The reason why I did this is because of a very, very special interaction with the coaster itself. I got inspired by a lot of realistic queue lines, such as the one in Taron, in Phantasialand, or also I think Busch Gardens has a very interesting one I found online, which is also, I'm not even sure if it's sunken down or if it just seems like being sunken down because it's between the hills or so on of that B&M coaster there. And just like checking out that you're working with the terrain and the givens. Now, in this harbor area, apparently this is a bit of a more inconvenient one, I guess, because weather effects, flooding and so on will be happening. So I'm not fully done with this area yet, but we will put some weathering effects on the walls just to make it even so much more realistic, simply because if there is a flooding, a spring flood or something like that, it just it definitely goes into creating some issues for the queue line, because that one will be flooded. I mean, not that it would matter for the people to go there, because the park would be closed off anyways then, but just for the maintenance in the future. But the big benefit of doing that is that I could create such a very unique interaction with the coaster, and I was able to fit the queue there without spending too much time on finding new spaces for that. So I personally was very happy, and if you've watched the last episodes closely, you know that this queue has been in place there for quite a while, because I had this idea in mind from the very beginning, and these things are very important to do. And that's already one of my first tips I want to give you guys. So if you struggle to finish your projects, this has several reasons. I myself have this all the time, because I'm like, very soon I will become bored by one specific build. And I mean, for me personally, there's also that second layer, which most people seem not to have. Normally, I want to, like, my attitude is that I want to finish off something for an episode, and I don't want to leave you guys halfway through. But sometimes there are projects, for example, like that just require so much more time, and I just can't fit 30 hours in one episode. Like, I could, but that is just ridiculous, okay? That just makes no sense whatsoever. So that aside, I always find myself having these issues if an area isn't fully planned, at least in my head, that I want to do. And with this ride over here, I did the opposite. I did plan out the entire experience of the ride at the very beginning, and I laid out the queue and everything I needed to do for that. At the very beginning, I just blocked a couple of these things. I did explain that in my mega tutorial, the advanced building mega tutorial. If you guys haven't seen that one, make sure to check it out on the channel. If I am a very nice, lovely little camel, I will put a linky to that to the top right now. But you'll come back to this episode, because we need to talk about a lot more things, okay? You don't leave, or if you leave, come back. Keep this thing on pause or on repeat, I don't care, but you come back, okay? Because we need to talk about that. So if you're using the technique of blocking out your areas, make sure that you really think about the eventualities you want to bring in, and also the why. Ask yourself why you would put certain things where you will put them. And by answering this question, you will always have, at least for me personally, it's the way, I have the urge then to finish that. And this queue sitting over here has been something that drew my attention for the whole time, and I couldn't wait for me to get to this point where I can finally tackle this queue and make this what I had in mind, create that. So this was rather important for me to do this, and so this episode went so much more smooth than it usually would, and also the build, because I had set this as a target for me already. So maybe if you guys struggle as well as I do sometimes, make sure that especially these areas you normally struggle with, you do fill with a story or with something that will drag your attention later on. So tell yourself you want to put a specific statue somewhere, or tell yourself you want to do a specific new technique in using foliage. And while I'm losing my voice over here, not sure why, I'm just gonna drink a little sip. You think about what I just said. Lovely water. Should be better for the last couple of minutes. Now we're real here. I don't like awkward cuts now. I'm just gonna drink while the episode, and maybe that's another tip. Just drink enough, I guess. Stay hydrated. No, I'm just kidding. But also, what helps is just put yourself some very tiny projects. So say to yourself, "Hey, I want to make one planter that looks super nice, and I want to use some new foliage tricks and trips over here." Oh my god, tips and tricks, not trips, which you get from doing too much of that one. So yeah, also there's another tip I'm doing over here. Leave yourself some challenges sometimes. If you don't feel like you can finish that fully, at least put yourself a bit of a task for the future, which makes it easier for you to get back there. And this is what I did over here. I already pre-aligned an idea for the exit of the ride, which will become a souvenir shop, and we will feature an on-ride photo on here. Knowing that this will come in the next update, I already reserved a space where this is going to happen. And so as soon as we have the update, I'll come back here and I'm going to put the proper souvenir shop, including the on-ride photo purchase station or whatever that's going to be. However that's going to be realized, I'll put that here. So yet another step to finishing this area later. That altogether is obviously no guarantee that you will eventually finish everything off. And here's another little tip. It is fully okay to just repeat certain things in other areas. You will see myself using a lot of this fence over here and a lot of the different types of bushes to block in areas. Foliage and bushes specifically are a great way to hide away areas, and I think of it as almost like a theme. So in movies or also in theme parks themselves, they do use facades all the time, and there is no such a thing than an unlimited budget, okay? So even in theme parks or so on, they have a control of viewing angles. Somewhat like as in a zoo, you don't want to have the people seeing your animals everywhere to make sure that the animals aren't stressed the whole time and so on. And I'm not saying that our coaster will become stressed or so, but you want to keep a certain level of excitement for the people so they don't want to see everything. And in order to keep an immersion alive, you also want to make sure that they don't see too much of a backstage area. It's not always possible, and depending on what type of park you're building, the more Disney highly themed parks apparently need to watch a lot closer to hiding those things, and the more kind of coaster lean Six Flags type of parks, they obviously won't bother too much unless it's as long as it's kind of featuring the correct rides and the correct thrill factor. That's definitely a thing. So you also have a bit to decide about the story of your park. But I always like to do foliage in order to hide certain things, or theming elements you have already used. So you can see me using these containers throughout the entire project, because it's one of these elements of the park that have become a bit of a ongoing thing and ongoing theme, and I did this intentionally. These containers are a great way to hide ugly areas, and no, you don't need to do them all. You don't need to fill in every single gap, guys. It is also okay, and take that as another tip here. You don't need to fill in all the gaps. If there's something you don't feel like there is a need to fill it, make sure you hide that away from the people. And the best way to do that is obviously use the guest mode, use walking around, make sure that you have a look from the guest perspective, and then use your typical kind of go-to angle you are using for playing, because all of us have our typical angle to look at a certain park. Despite the fact we have a full control over 360 degrees in here, we always have our favorite angles to look at. Now, I did ramble a lot of this about this because I feel like these are very important tips for you guys to take into consideration. You can see me also using the barriers over here with the supports. I did turn on the supports on on path, but I don't really like if people glitch through it, so I went this extra step and did actually include some of the barriers to ensure that people do not glitch through the support itself. You see myself also using a bit of different ground patterns. I just got bored by the insane amount of concrete and grayish concrete color, so I was like, you know what, why don't we just keep a bit of the old pattern over here, which with the new pathing, obviously that is a lot more simple to do. I used some of the in-game railings because why not, I guess. And I tried to find the right space to really make this all work together. I fixed a couple of connection issues here and there, making sure that I fill in some of the... As I said, this is also part of the trick. You just come back to certain areas, and once you fill in all the things that you were thinking about in the past that you want to do them in the future, make sure that you just quickly go there and put a couple of things in to make them this area look really finished. And I'm really, really glad I did this. Now, you will see that there is a bit of a jump in the order of what you build. So you do already see the fully themed twister over here, not twister, what's that thing, the scissor. But we will do the full build of it in a couple of seconds. This was part of my big tutorial, the advanced building tutorial. I'm going to talk about that while we do it. But just back to the coaster, you can see I really tried to make sure this time around that there is a lot of interaction going on with the coaster and the queue. You'll see that in the real-time part. I think it ended up being outstanding. I think it's really one of my best works I've ever done in a Planet game because of the multiple layers that I took into consideration for this build, and also because of the setting itself, because it is, frankly, a rather hard setting by the time, because we had so many coasters already built in this, and to give this specific coaster, the Eurofighter coaster, a very unique appeal in this park has been a bit of a challenge. And also because the other ones had a bit more of a natural environment to thrive in. So we do have the first launched coaster, which goes over the main lake of our park, which inherits already the special element of that lake, of that centerpiece, of being in the centerpiece. So that was an easy one. We have the tilted coaster, the tilt coaster, which has this main feature with the crane being tilted down and then going through what is the old kind of storage building of some of the main goods of our harbor history, which again in itself is a bit more of a context that is nice. But this coaster we've built over here, the Eurofighter, this is just like somewhere in here. And this is also why theming wise I went very loosely with a typical kind of, I don't know, late 20th century kind of thing, or maybe no, early 20th century I should say, or late 19th century kind of harbor build with a lot of brick and then these kind of lamps that potentially would even still be run, not in this park, but before we took over, they would have potentially been still fueled by petroleum. I mean, maybe not, but like kind of this is the idea that these would have been maybe old gas kind of lampposts, and then, you know, obviously now we have LEDs and very efficient, blah, 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 but that kind of could be part of it. And this building, as it has no specific theming, which is an ongoing pattern in this park, so everything that is not in one of these themed halls, we will have more of the themed halls in the future. And you guys can actually give me a hint down what would you love to see. What type of themed hall do you want to see? It's kind of almost like an indoor land, if you will. Like, what type of indoor land theme would you love to see? I mean, literally, we are getting fairy tale soon, we're getting sci-fi soon, we potentially will get pirate as well at some point, so there would be certain cool options to go for, but you know, you just let me know. There could also be a completely different theme. We could go for something completely different that is not on the list, and so make the challenge a bit more exciting, a bit more unique, I guess. Also adding some of the elements over here that would be required to shut the doors, so we have some garage kind of rolling gate type of things. Yeah, I think it turned out very beautiful. It's rather simplistic, to be honest, but it's very nice indeed, very, very clean, very detailed, and I will make this building seem a bit more weathered to the ground. I will potentially use a couple of different colors to make that appeal, but I'm not overdoing it, because again, my idea would be that this is one of the newest coasters, and hence this area has been cleaned up quite a lot. So you can see me also do some more custom supporting here, just to ensure that yeah, one of our mid-course break runs has a bit more of an emphasis on it and looks a bit nicer. So, as promised earlier, we will also go back to the building here on the side, which was part of my big tutorial. So if there is a bit of a weird movement here and there, this is down to the fact that I was explaining what I am doing. But as this episode is sped up quite a lot, it shouldn't be too much of a big deal. But we can quickly talk about the technique I'm using over here. This is abusing or using, however you want to like that, the platform to rotate pieces. So for those of you who don't know, there are 3 platform pieces in the game that can make the same benefit of mirroring and rotating pieces as the attach to flat right or the attach to right feature comes with. So that means with using the platforms, you can create a wonderfully clean circle. The problem is, if you want to make that into a normal building to just be able to delete one side of it, which is exactly what we need over here, you need to just recreate the same kind of thing in a normal building and then use the good old center pillar kind of rotational trick. The big advantage of doing what I just did beforehand with the platform is that you will already have a very perfectly made piece, because it's always 1/12 of the entire rotated circle. So you can always go back to your piece, your center pillar, then just rotate around the pillar, and then you will be able to just move it in steps of 12, or actually of 6, depending on, or maybe even 3, well, depending on how you are just rotating it, but whatever. So you can do that. And then also explained another thing that I find very important, so this is for you guys as a bit of an extra bit here, paletting, as I call it. I'm not even sure if that's the correct word, but I think of it as giving myself a color palette before starting to build, and only it's not colors, it's basically pieces I want to use for my specific idea. In this very case, I wanted to make a industrial kind of wall using some plaster and some brick pieces, ensuring we have some details in here. I utilized some of the curbs, which apparently, as of the game's display, they are made out of concrete. I still don't believe that. The texture screams metal to me, but hey, who am I to judge? The game says it's concrete. I'm gonna deal with that. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun making this build look good, because while explaining, you're also thinking about so many things that you just sometimes do without perceiving it really. You just do it because you feel like it's good, but it's always helpful to think about why you do certain things, to just double check yourself if it is just for the sake of doing it or if there's a real purpose behind that. And doing this palettes at the beginning, as I said, at least helps me to be very consistent in my build. This is one of my few tricks to ensure that I'm consistent and stick to my plan, stick to my architectural style I went for. And by using a limited palette, it just makes you also become more creative in a way. And sure, you can still go to the menu and look for the pieces exactly you'll need, which I did, and you all should do, but because you've been limited before, you have a very clear idea of what's missing, which is the huge difference to if you would build with all pieces from the get-go, because then you would always think like, could you use that? Could you use that? What do I need it for? Or do I even need it? And if you don't have these questions and you just have a very specific questions, like for example, what type of small metal piece can I use for a fake handle on the window piece? That is a very specific question you can answer by finding a suitable piece, rather than, oh yeah, I just want to make a window that kind of sits inside the building. What type of piece can I use? By the way, talking about this could be a very cool AI feature for Planet Coaster, by the way, or Planet Coaster 2. An AI-based in-game search that contextually gives you pieces that could fit what you're building. I'm not sure if that could work, but you know, I even would think of how a GPT that you write would work. You only need to have the live feature enabled, but I could like literally think of making this as a screenshot and put a GPT out. Okay, sorry, but my mind goes crazy. But the only thing you need to do is like make a screenshot of all the pieces in game, give that to the GPT as a basis, and then show them what you're building, and then let the GPT tell you what type of pieces could come in handy here. I think that should definitely work. But anyways, I'm using also a little different trick over here, using the pathing tool for roof tops, which always comes in handy if you want to do railings that you don't want to do yourself. I used this trick already on the big cruise ship, where I was too lazy to build the complete railing of this ginormous ship. So what I did instead is I just build a little bit of a pathway around, making sure it is aligned with the outside lines or outside walls, and then I used our pieces to create this wonderful railings, because you can toggle railings now on one and the other side, which I think again is such a huge benefit for the game. It is so good. I love that feature. It is a brilliant feature, and I would love to see this even be explored a bit more, so to even get more of these things in the future. I really would love that. But yeah, as you can tell, we are going in here and making sure that this flat ride gets its proper nice stuff to it. I kind of like the idea to build the main control unit be attached to a wall to make it appear bigger than it actually is. The more I think about this, a bit more of control about the ride attendants piece would be nice, I guess. I mean, I've already been very vocal about the fact that I don't really like the pure existence, I guess, of the ride attendant is a thing, but like in the shape the person is right now, with actually no job or so, it just is ridiculous. But anyways, we are at the end of a rather long and very quick cut, I don't know, very quick speed build. I do talk to you in the real-time part now. Let's have a look at it. Oh boy, I cannot tell you how excited I am for this real-time part, specifically today. I am very, very, very proud of my work over here. I will spoil that right away. I'm not fully done with this area, but there are good reasons for that. We're going to talk about these reasons in a second. But yeah, oh my god, I'm so freaking excited. It all is going to work out so well. We do have a very odd queue over here for our flat ride, but I intentionally did it that way. I wanted to maintain a couple of things. This thing in the back there will also become a feature in the future, and you can see also how nicely everything else works. Now the skyline of our hypercoaster comes even better into play. There are a couple of issues here with the gas flow, as you can clearly tell. I did a bit of an oopsie here, which I am going to fix somehow, I guess, with a bit of a breakup of this area over here, but we'll find a way to do that. So this is the star of this area, as you can see. This is the coaster, and look at all the layouts, my friends. I am so proud. I talked about that very early on in this project. So one of the main issues of this setting is that we don't have any natural height differentiations or differences. This is a very flat area. We are at sea level, literally, and we do have a very constant flat ground. This flat ground doesn't allow for very interesting things to look at per default, so what we will need is a build or a way how to build overall in this project to give this whole thing interesting sidelines, interesting areas to look at, and a way to feature different heights. So there comes the coaster. Look at that. Oh my god, there you go. Gosh, that I could look at it forever. And so one thing I did over here, as I said, I did a sunken queue over here. Look at this. This is so cool. So you get the people, they come from back there, which is part of the queue, which is not fully done yet. But you can see so much interaction of the coaster with the queue. There are some security nettings missing, but over here we do have the security cage, I want to call it almost, because everything is in the cage. But I mean, just look at it. Look at the different angles to... isn't that coaster beauty? I find this absolute mega coaster beauty. I could even imagine this becoming the thumbnail of the episode. I will definitely have to wait until the coaster at least comes into the roll or so, but yeah, oh gosh, this makes me so excited. I've never really spent so much time doing these things because the setting maybe wasn't the right one, but this over here, this is the setting. This is a very intentional way to build this coaster. Hopefully you guys understand partially the layout a lot better now, why I did certain things the way I did them. As you will tell, well, I'll be able to tell now, there's a lot of things I did fully intentional with this ride over here. Specifically when it comes to all the different height variations in this ride and where I did put the queue. But yeah, without further talking, let's actually jump over to the queue. Oh, by the way, I also finished this area off now, which I think is also equally nice. This bridge over here, which it really did not fulfill any purpose in the past, is now done, and now you can see it does fulfill a purpose. It becomes part of the track, it becomes part of the idea. We can also see the backstage area here, the wonderful switch track. I'm not sure if you will be able to see it in the final version. We may actually put a couple more containers in here to block the view even more. Maybe there's even more containers coming here in the front, but I'm not entirely sure if I do this or if I will keep that open so you can see the backstage area. My tendency, but you can say in the comments what you would do, but my tendency is to not show it. To see that from the queue is fully fine, but to see it from over here, I may actually want to avoid. Maybe I want to grant people only the view to here, and they can still see a tiny bit of the... Oh gosh, this is so cool. The coaster passing by is so cool. The pacing now also is so good. But yeah, having this view over here might be enough. And so this weird looking staircase, again, is becoming a feature. But you can also tell now, if you come down here, there's so much more to build. Gosh, there's so much crap lying over there. Anyways, is the immediate access to the coaster. I'm just going to skip a couple of areas over here because they're not done. And then you go in. And again, this may not be the final layout of our queue. I may do a bit more zigzag here and there. I may guide it somewhere else. But this then is the main feature where you get down. And this is going to be so cool. We also have some sunshades over here. But also, I envision this being not a kind of water... How do you say that? It basically will also hold away water, so it's not like that water can dribble to only a sunshade. It is definitely more than that. It might actually be a tarp or something, which, granted, in the summer it would become relatively hot in here, so maybe there needs to be kind of a venting system as well. But yeah, so if you go through here, then you go up the hill, you will have this area, and I'm thinking about making a bit more of the queue go here. This is definitely one of the areas which would naturally fill in very nicely with the queue, but I'm not entirely sure if I do. I may actually do this because this area would really allow for a very natural flow of a... Maybe we could squeeze in 4 of those. So imagining the queue goes further over here, be 1, 2, 3, and 4, because otherwise it would just be 2 and then rejoin over here. But well, that's that. And then if you go up here, you will be ending up in the station, and the station, as you have seen in the time lapse, is also custom done. There is a lot of things I did on purpose in here. I used the guiders that are a bit more attached with some scratches and so on, not as clean looking. And then you can see the coaster car going vertically over here, leaving the station for some fun and excitement. God, the lighting does a wonderful job over here. So yeah, this is that building, and if we storm out here and use the pathway back, can we skip this over here and sneak ourselves through? Not really, right? Can I sneak myself through here? Yes, I can, but oh yeah, I made it through, okay? Because otherwise I would have just needed the whole thing. This is where, again, the souvenir shop will be, and it's going to be great for 2 different ways. So if we come from the western area, we will go around. We obviously have the skyline of the coaster over here, which also looks pretty neat, by the way. We've got our playing ground for the kids, the playground. And then once you turn around and you leave this area, you will be greeted with this wonderful souvenir shop over here. And this look at the coast. I mean, look at that with the suns. Wow, that is so good. I would really definitely ride this thing in real life. So yeah, there's a couple of things I want to do for the right hand side over here. I may want to enlarge the souvenir shop, maybe get the people a bit of a recreational area over here, because this whole area would benefit from it having a bit of a recreational area here and have its counterpart on this side. So you could really spend some time in here, which from the flow of the park would make a lot of sense. You've got a kids playground over here. We've got 2 coasters very close by to access. We've got an exit of a coaster here, which is usually a place where people or family members would wait, usually. So that is definitely in the planning to make like a bit of a waiting area here. And then we have another flat ride, which has its exit here as well. So there is a good chance that a lot of people would split up and say, you know what, I don't want to go on this coaster, but don't worry, I'm just going to make a little bit of a break here, have a snack or something like that. And then again, a souvenir shop nearby. It makes a whole bunch of sense. We may put a popcorn stand or so here. And also we have this window, which gives you that insane look of the coaster passing by here. Yeah. Can you feel that I'm proud of this build? I am freaking proud of this build, and hopefully you guys understand why. There are a couple of security issues I will fix. This one over here, the urge to jump on top of that and break your hand is relatively big, so I will need to fix that. Also, I'm loving the fact how you can see that insane lift hill in the back. So yeah, as you can see, as we continue with this project, everything is coming together and everything is looking so much better. We do have a bit of a restroom, by the way, in here in the back. I like the fact how it's hidden there. And then I may put the queue, I thought about this briefly, to put the queue of this thing in here. I will change this and repurpose that area for the queue instead of being such a madman to put this all in the center. But realistically, this breaks up the mood a little. Let me show you from above, because that is definitely something. Whoops, we've end of day. How do I get rid of it? There you go. So what I definitely will say is that this queue on here really does benefit the plaza, so it does make sense to have it here. Gas flow wise, it is not that dramatic, but having like our snack thingies over here doesn't really help to guide the people, because usually that's just the exit and then people need to go all the way around here, which is not too bad. You've got a restroom down here, so the flow makes sense. We do also need to have a lot more bins, guys. We have so much litter across the park, it is ridiculous. But yeah, so this is the coaster, and again, this section over here is one of my favorites I've ever built. I think everything about this feels so real and so cool, and the different height layers, the different elevations, the different way how it all plays together. And we don't only have this sunken area, we also have the staircase leading to the station, because the station itself is raised a little, and so on and so forth. I think it really captivates that beauty of a coaster and that idea of making sure people want to go on your ride, that they build up excitement while they are in the queue. There are a couple of little things I want to do. I want to definitely build a fountain, a drinking fountain that we scatter around all of our queues. The next episode potentially will have a lot of these smaller things like drinking fountains and some details and some power boxes, power cables. I wanted to do all these things. I'm potentially not thinking of making a new area, but I have to think about that. Maybe I'm just gonna skip this for a later episode when we have the souvenir shop, because it would be a perfect episode to round off this area. Would be perfect to do that with the souvenir shop. But let's see if I can hold this for so long, or if I will break under the pressure. But also a little area that I want to tackle relatively soon is this area over here. There's a lot to do. I want to utilize this land a bit nicer. I want to embed this a bit nicer. I want to make the connection with this a bit nicer, and I want to make sure that we have an idea where to branch out next. So the very logical next area is going to be this corner over here, that we build a basic layout for that area and then make sure to find ideas to what we can squeeze in here. And I want to also make sure that we do have a connection that crosses the bridge here, because that area is super empty. No one is really trafficking this here, and I want to ensure that people go all the way around and have an option to cross through here relatively quick. We have the bridge crossing over our go-kart track, which is great, but not more. And I still have to get rid of the ship, which the ship is still a very dramatic thing in our park, which I need to get rid of. But yeah, there is a lot to do in this project. I'm not getting tired of this project whatsoever. I'm loving it more than ever. I'm loving the idea and the promise of this project more than ever, and I would love to hear your opinion on that one. I know there have been a couple of people being very skeptical about the maybe longevity of this project and ingenuity that you can fit in, but you let me know if it works or not. I have the feeling it absolutely does work in the best way possible, but you guys need to tell me if it does or not, and I'll be very excited to hear your feedback on today's episode, but also the overall project and what you could envision being in here. I know for a fact that a couple of people, we are still lacking a huge centerpiece in somewhere in the back. People talked about the Elbphilharmonie maybe building, which obviously is going to be one of the biggest challenges ever. But there's also the Hamburger Michel, which we could do a couple of things that would be possible. So yeah, let me know what you think about this project and today's build specifically in the comments down below. And yeah, I'm very excited to read about it, and I'll come back to you in either the comments or the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Hopefully my excitement could have been translated to you today, because I'm very proud of this episode. And yeah, I'll talk to you in the next one.